Welcome into today's episode of How to Ride a Roller Coaster. My guest today is Mr. Pierce Brantley. Pierce is an author, speaker, consultant, plus a million other things. How are you, my friend?
David, so good to be on the show, man. It's been long overdue. I'm doing really well. Good to be a part of this.
Yeah, man. It's definitely been long overdue. And like we were talking a little bit before we started, the recording tonight, I've been keeping up with a lot of the things that you've been doing. Multiple books authored, lots of consulting, lots of speaking. Tell me about where you got into that, kind of what your, I don't want to say average day because no day is average, but what's going on in your world these days?
Yeah, so as you said, I've been doing the consulting thing for a while now, but really, if you want to talk origin stories, as a kid, I think I started selling Christmas cards. I'd collect Christmas cards and stuff like that and then sell it out in front of the house and call it like my data mine from the beginning. I'd watch the cars go back and forth and be like, well, that car passed the house 5 times. That's 5 impressions. The chance that they're going to buy a 50 cents card is like super, super high right now. Then I learned a lot about false positives too in that whole experience. So I got my entrepreneurial skills really early on from a young age. Sold my first company when I was 26, which kind of put me on a fun sort of launch into working with all kinds of businesses after that, after kind of getting that behind me. Now what I do is I'm a Fortune 500 consultant. I typically work with blue chip companies, but what that's allowed me to do, working on that sort of outer edge of the best companies, is come back around to solopreneurship and say, kind of reverse engineer, okay, there are these different stages that a business goes through that are super interesting and very different. And the title of CEO or founder or president means completely different things at each one of these stages, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm really sort of focused on outside of the Fortune work is really just helping that solopreneur figure out where they want to go and how they kind of need to get the reins on their business. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to be, like the podcast says, you're going to be on a roller coaster.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are some of those key takeaways from these Fortune 500 companies that you have worked with that maybe kind of inspire or help give you leverage when it comes to talking with solopreneurs?
Yeah. So when you think about kind of the way big brands position themselves, they've really carved out one single idea in the mind of the consumer and the marketplace. And what's funny is solopreneurs, we have tons of different ideas in our head. We're trying to just basically throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And when it comes time to delegate work out, when it comes time to kind of start to remove yourself from the business, a lot of times you don't necessarily know what that one thing is yet. It's growing, you're getting some traction, but you still feel like you're testing, you're still feeling like you're experimenting. And when you're in a really mature company, very little of that happens. You're on the outer edge of the innovation cycle, and we won't go too deep into that, but basically it means you've sort of hit market maturity, which means you're just trying to maintain your footprint, right, and kind of reduce losses. When you're at the solopreneur level or you're at the small business level, it's completely different. You're basically trying to see how you can create a new footprint or take some land away from the big guys. And that creates some interesting sort of problems and opportunities when it comes to bringing people to come underneath your vision, because people need a singularity when it comes to buy-in, right? If they don't have that singularity, then they're not going to trust you as an entrepreneur, even though you're very competent, you're very trustworthy, you've got a total history and slew of successes behind you. The people that are coming in to buy into that vision may not necessarily get that unless they've got a ton of focus to kind of come underneath. So that's kind of one of the main big takeaways.
Yeah, that's so interesting too, because I feel like you're exactly right. With the solopreneur, a lot of times there's also maybe not those other people in that circle, especially if they don't have other employees or co-founders, to really bounce ideas off of. I like this idea. I see where there's some market share here that we could possibly capitalize on. There's a gap in this industry, but is it the right place to go? So is that kind of a mindset thing, or would you kind of do kind of like the Seth Godin thing where it's like, look, just ship it, come up with the idea, find where that negative space might lie, and go full bore? How do you help a solopreneur know kind of where to stop?
I love that question, and I think so. It depends a little bit on your industry. So you and I both are real familiar with like the software background, the SaaS background, and in that world, absolutely, go test 100 things and see which one works. And you can do that because it's actually cheap to test. If you're going to go build like a fighter jet or a new car, like it's not cheap to test. You need to kind of have you need to have a really good understanding of market opportunity before you move into that. So there's a little bit of question around kind of what you're doing, but absolutely you need to know that like this product market fit, which I'm sure you've talked about plenty of times on this show. From a mindset perspective, though, when it comes to sort of separating yourself from the business, I like to think in terms of blind spots, because how you think as an entrepreneur is going to impact everything you do, whether it's product market fit, whether it's bringing people underneath you. In my newest book, Not Your Job, we talk about two things called two basically limiting mindsets, and they're called anti-values. And what an anti-value is basically a way of thinking about your world, your entrepreneurial world, that self-limits you even when you don't realize it. And we actually have to get rid of these if we're going to have any kind of success with people or otherwise. So the two anti-values, I'll go into them real quick. One is called the ego driver. The other is called the fear driver. Now, the ego driver both of these are subconscious. The ego driver basically tells you and the brand are the exact same thing. There's no way anyone else could come up with a good idea. There's no way anyone else could come up with a new product or a new service, a new way of looking at things, because you and the business are the same thing. And you start to get this separation anxiety. And you see these entrepreneurs sometimes where they attract good talent because, they're real charismatic or something. And then they crash and burn, or the person leaves, and you go, like, that seemed like such a good fit. The reason is the ego driver. It comes in and it basically says there's no separation between the two things. I experienced this firsthand with a C-level guy once. We were trying to launch a really big website for a new offering. They were really kind of innovative in like the social media space, coming up with some new stuff there. And they were brilliant, and they saw the market the right way. But every single time we tried to launch this thing, it wouldn't work. And we're like, why is this not working? We were getting exasperated because we knew we were onto something, and we were doing the collateral the right way. And finally, one day, they just explode. I kid you not, David. They explode, and they go, I am the brand. There's no way you can separate the two things. The perfect indicator of an ego driver. And while we may never think of doing that to someone who comes and chooses to work for us, the truth is, if it's our idea, if it's our business, subconsciously there is a little bit of association there. And we've got to realize that once we bring people underneath that vision, that there is going to need to be a little bit of separation. And there's a good chance they're going to be able to take things farther than you simply by not being you, which is a hard pill to swallow, but that's part of being a visionary. So then the other one, I'll go into it real quick, is the fear driver. And the fear driver simply says, if I don't do this, it's going to fail. And most of us deal with this one. Most of us really struggle with the idea that someone could do something better than us. And also, if you're coming, especially as a solopreneur, if you're coming from someone who used to work a 9-to-5 or used to own a role, the idea that you don't really own anything other than where you're going is going to create some internal anxieties. And that creates a lot of fear that things won't get done the right way. Both of these things are limiting mindsets, and both of them we have to realize come at us subconsciously all the time, especially when new people are coming into our world.
Man, that's fascinating. And so much of this, it feels like I'm flipping through the pages or, listening to the audio of somebody like Seth Godin, Gary Vee, when we talk about the lizard brain and those things, where we have the imposter syndrome. And I know I just got this great position, or I just started this unbelievable company, have this great idea, but, I'm sure somebody else out there can do it. Why hasn't somebody else already out there done it? I'm nothing special. And you start to just kind of have that limiting belief on yourself. And like you mentioned with founders kind of having the trouble with the separation when it comes to, a lot of times I feel like, especially working with, like Founders Live, where you see a lot of these different entrepreneurs who are solopreneurs. Maybe they are maybe they've just closed a round of funding. Maybe they're about to hire their first employee, something like that. I've seen a lot of times it's hard to kind of separate it founder from baby. You know, it's like, well, this is my baby. This is my idea. It's going to go as far as I go, without being able to say, I need to hire talent that can push this baby further than I can. I need to hire a great community that's going to help me nurture and raise this baby. I can't do it all on my own. I have the grand vision. I know where I want it to go, but I have to at some point be able to kind of loosen up on those reins and trust those people that I have hired, because I did make those hires. And that's how we're going to get to the next level, is to bring people on that share that value, share the why of where we want to go, and let them help nurture this baby.
That's absolutely right. And, we're both parents of young kids. And, as dads especially, like, you never want to be helicopter dad, right? Where you're just kind of hovering around watching. Because why? That even though it may feel natural to kind of want to make sure they don't mess up, the very fact that you're watching to make sure they don't mess up means that you're probably going to play a part in them messing up. Like, they need to kind of step out. And it's really hard, right? Yeah. We do the same thing as founders. So in the book, I talk about basically 4 levels. It's called the elevator effect. And there's 4 levels of delegation that every founder needs to kind of get grips on, because each level frees you up to focus more on vision, focus more on execution, focus more on, making your investors happy, if that's, an aspect for you. So the first floor is the ground floor, is called Know What I Know, which is simply, you have to communicate the history of the company, the vision of the company, the insider language or ways of talking about the brand, and the role that person is going to have. Like, that's table stakes. If you don't actually start there, none of your attempts to separate yourself from the work and get other people into it are going to be effective. And the reason they're not going to be effective is because of those drivers we talked about earlier. Subconsciously, you're going to just pull the work away. So you have to set that good foundation. The next level up, once you've done that, is do what I do. And at that point, you're just simply modeling what you would want them to do. Like, okay, this is how we approach, like, SaaS marketing. This is how we approach product innovation. This is how we approach, HR or finance or anything. This is how we're different, and this is how I'm going to model it. You model it, you show them, and once they can do what you do in whatever aspect of that business, then you can move on to the next level, which is show me what you do. And once you do, show me what you do, you're like, okay, now I'm at a point where I'm trusting you with something that I've modeled. Now it's all about you as a entrepreneur getting feedback. You want a feedback loop. That's just called reporting, right? You set up the precedent you want. You set up the feedback loops you want. But the point is, you want to be separated from the details, right? Just going back to, like, the helicopter parent thing. If I watch every single step my kid takes, I'm like, well, that was at a 35-degree angle. Well, that one needs a little bit more stability. Like, my youngest right now is, like, walking sideways, and he's doing a great job, and I'm so proud of him. But if every single time I tried to ask him to, like, step towards me or go catch the ball or something like that, and I hyper-analyzed every single one of those things, man, I would never go to sleep at night. And how many of us as entrepreneurs, we obsess about what our employees are doing or not doing. We're not there. I call this like you need to figure out what you need in order to get good sleep at night. Once you know those details, and typically it's like 2 or 3 things, you don't care about anything else. It's none of your business. It's not part of your business anymore. You don't own that part of your business, so why do you care about it? Let them figure it out and figure out what those measurables are.
That's great.
Yeah. And then the last floor is simply, I can't remember right now because it's 8:30 at night. When you're at the last floor, basically the process starts all over again. And when you're there, basically you're realizing, okay, they can do what you can do. They understand the culture, and they're giving you those metrics and those feedback loops. Now it's time to start the process over again, and they let rise people up the elevator. Oh. And when that happens, you open yourself up to organic innovation, meaning people get to do micro innovations on your business for you. You're not micromanaging, and the thing is growing organically without you even watching, almost without your permission.
Where do you see hindrances in this? Because that sounds unbelievable from every step. You're allowing them to to grow. You're taking away certain parts that don't impact you so that you can focus on your business without being in your business. Where do you see a lot of the solopreneurs or entrepreneurs with small teams? Where do you see them stumble when it comes to that?
So absolutely, it comes down to micromanagement. And here's the thing. Most of the time we look at other people in our lives and we go, well, I remember they were a micromanager. I hate it when they micromanaged me. I'm never going to micromanage anyone. And then what do? We obsess about the details. So micromanagement is not a personality defect or a personality trait. Micromanagement comes from a lack of knowledge. Anytime there's unknown in your business, you obsess about that unknown. Why? Because you care, in part. But also because you're trying to basically mitigate risk, because everything is so fragile when you're first starting something out. So the first thing every entrepreneur needs to realize is that you are susceptible to micromanagement in any area of your business where you are not confident about execution. So what you have to go address is that confidence around execution. So you can either train that up or you can hire that person in. And then from there, you just need to say, what is my definition of success for this milestone, for this project, for this the service, whatever it is, for this person even. Get that crystal clear. Go write it down, go put it over your affirmations if you're one of those kind of people. That's the thing. And once you know that's the thing, watch and measure things up against that. And that's all you need to care about. And that'll prevent you from micromanaging. To the degree you don't kind of nail down what those things are, you will obsess because you don't know. It's that fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and this whole blueprint feels very scalable, very tangible, this is what I need to do right now. I can clearly see what I need to work on next. This is how I can get other people to help me. That it feels very tangible and scalable. What has the reception been like, especially when you're consulting and working with your Fortune 500 clients and solopreneurs? What has kind of that feedback been like?
Yeah, what people tell me, and it's been grateful to hear because we went through a lot of iterations of the model, is that it's just really easy to follow, because it is a blueprint and there's tons of free downloads. There's tons of templates that come with it, which is nice. But that all kind of came from distilling out what kind of is each next thing you need to do. Because a lot of times, when we look at managers that we've liked to work underneath, I remember one from when I was at Harman Samsung years ago, and she was incredible. She really kind of gave me the tools that I needed and everything else. We often think of great managers or great leaders as someone who they've got it. And that's like saying, well, man, do you look at the McGregor fight? Man, he's just got it. Or you look at someone the strongest man in the world, or a big power lifter, and they go deadlift 1,000 pounds. Man, that guy's just so talented. That gal is just so talented. They just got it. No, they followed a plan to get to that point. And I think many times as entrepreneurs, we think we could never be that because it's not in us. Or wrongly, we also think I have two choices in my career as a business leader. I can either be an entrepreneur or I can be a manager. And I don't want to go into maintenance mode. So I'm going to go pick the entrepreneurial category. But then that scares me because anytime I realize I need to go manage something in my business, I think I'm giving up on my calling as an entrepreneur. That's why there's this whole category called entrepreneurial management. It realizes that you're never going to put your business in maintenance mode. That's not who you are. But you do need a skill set that's going to systematically move you up the ranks of a scalable business, because we love talking about scalable businesses. But there's a lot of ambiguity around what are the things I do in the order that I need to do them in order to get there. And delegation, especially entrepreneurial management, is a big part of that.
Yeah, and I think as you're trying to grow from solopreneur to having a larger team to expanding your business and scaling, everything's coming at you 90 miles an hour. Hiring, firing, every single piece of your business is coming at you. And some of those pieces of your business probably aren't the things that you're best adapted to. If you're a software engineer and your company is software engineer focused, human resources and culture and marketing and sales are all pieces that don't lie within your spectrum. So you're having to hire for those, and which is taking away a lot of time from your software engineering or your vision of your roadmap. So being able to have something tangible where you can see you're not trying to go from level 1 to level 4. That's unattainable. No. Just like the power lifter lifting 100 pounds today, I can't lift 1,000 pounds tomorrow. Everything starts going from level 1 to level 2, and that's how you start to build. And I'm so glad that there are things like this and what you've created, because I do feel like when it comes to growing that business from a solopreneur perspective, a lot of times it does feel kind of murky, because should you go, how big is too big? Should I keep it small? I've heard that smaller is better, but I want to be bigger because maybe there's more investment opportunity or whatever the case. But being able to have that blueprint in place, I feel like that's just super helpful to anybody that's trying to have those same directions.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think you hit on a couple key things, because so your business is never going to grow past you, right? So as a solopreneur, you can get deeper and greater talents. Like you can get better and better and better what you do. But really that's synonymous with being just like an A-level employee, right? Yeah. So you can go really deep on skill set and really trust that skill set. But your business is never going to go past your skill set. And so the question is, do you want a business that's heavy on your skill set or heavy on your vision? And really, you can't have both. Like you got to make a choice there. It doesn't mean you can't be a skilled entrepreneur, but hopefully your skill set is not what makes your business great. Otherwise, it's going to end up being a pretty limited business. Not saying you won't ever have impact. It just means when you think about the potential that your business could have through the lens of your vision, then it's going to be a limiting factor. The other thing I think I'd sort of say to all that is, like, to the degree you don't start taking those baby steps, is going to kind of lead you towards burnout. And burnout's something I talk about a lot with entrepreneurs, because it's the number one killer of businesses. I think it was last year, Harvard Business Review put out some information, and it was like $300 billion. There's $300 billion in losses every single year. And that loss is actually linked directly to burnout of the business leader themselves. And wow. I see it happen over and over again with folks who just, they sleep at their businesses. They're there on the weekends, and they keep on thinking, someday, like, there's going to be a tipping point. The tipping point is you getting out of the way. If you don't get out of the way, your business is going to implode. I like to call it the time tax. Eventually, when you first start your business, you're like, I'll give some time to it. It's my baby. I'm going to make it grow, right? Yeah. So you put in 40 hours, you put in 60 hours, you put in 80 hours. Before you know it, your business is taking all of your time, which means it's taking all of your energy, which means it may flourish in one area, but then it's going to die on another. It's going to flourish back in another area, it's going to die in another, and you're going to go back and forth, and it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's just a nova, and it implodes and it's gone. So you've got to start taking those baby steps now, and to the degree that we take them seriously, we're going to be able to kind of lift ourselves out of that with a lot less stress, with a lot less pain, and having a lot more time for our family and the things we love to do as well.
I don't think that there's enough talk about the energy release of entrepreneurship, because it's just like you said, it's either full burnout, I work all day, every day on something, and my health suffers, my family quality time suffers, or I'm looking for that, work-life balance is kind of a side hustle thing on both ends of the spectrum. But I feel like that hustle culture was celebrated for so long, where it was kind of that badge of honor to work 90 hours a week. It's like, hey, I didn't sleep this weekend. I didn't see people. All I did was work on my startup. It's like, well, okay, but to your point a while ago, it can't grow past you. And a lot of times that hindrance is you being in the way. And I think that that's just such a kind of that light bulb moment of maybe it's me. Maybe I need to take that step back, allow my baby a minute to breathe, not be that helicopter entrepreneur founder who's making sure that they don't wobble to the side a little bit. Get out of the way, let it bump into a wall and find its footing.
Man, I love the way you said that. And just to kind of go back to our earlier imagery of working out, because there's so many parallels, I think, to that. I'm not like, if you're listening to this, I'm not some like jacked guy, although I do love to work out. David's got it going on. But so when you think about working out, all right, let's say you wanted to go, compete for like the strongest person in the world competition, something like that, or like a Mr. Olympia or whatever it is, and that was your goal. If you said to yourself, all right, I'm going to hit that goal because that's the dream. I know that potential is in me, and I'm going to go the distance. Therefore, I'm going to work out 80 hours a week, not see my family, and not rest. Are you going to hit that goal? No, you're going to kill yourself. Like your body needs focused execution on the things that work to grow so you can get towards that. And the same, like it's the exact same with entrepreneurship. The idea of hustle culture, like that's great if you want to go watch like Billionaires on HBO or something like that. Like go consume all of the movie versions of that you want. Good entrepreneurs are good at execution, and good execution is like, we're here in Texas. It's like working with a sniper rifle. It's focused. It knows exactly where it wants to hit, and it does that. It's not a shotgun approach. It doesn't do everything at once. That's going to kill you. You're not going to be able to do it. So a healthy, mature entrepreneur realizes that it's all about the right execution at the right timeline, at the right point, and really nailing that landing, not exhausting yourself. If you exhaust yourself, you're going to be no good, and you're not going to hit your goals. That's just reality.
Do you still find that a lot, even with maybe some of the advising side, when it comes to some of those Fortune 500 companies? Just thinking through the energy release and taking kind of your sniper versus shotgun metaphor, or is that a little bit more in the solopreneur? Once you get to the Fortune 500, maybe it's not quite, you don't see it quite as much.
The funny thing about, I think, any business, no matter what the size it is, and there's probably parallels to this outside of the business world, is that they're needy relationships, right? So like if you give it, 80 hours of your time, it'll take 80 hours of your time. However, if you give it 10 really good hours of your time, it'll take 10 really good hours of your time. So this is hard. Again, part of this is hustle culture, like you were saying. But a business will take what you give it. The healthy thing to realize is that just because you're giving doesn't mean it's a healthy relationship, right? So the difference, I would say, between, and this is the hard thing, when you're just getting stuff off the ground, you do have a lot of identity, going back to those drivers and getting that thing off the ground, right? Your name's on the line, your last name's on the line. What are your significant others going to think about you? What are your other entrepreneurial colleagues going to think about you? So you have a lot on the line, like emotionally, you're vested in it. And so it doesn't feel like giving a lot, especially if you're passionate about it. On the other end of the spectrum, on the fortune end of the spectrum, it's more about, again, rewarding yourself with another type of job. It's not that you don't care about the work. I mean, sure, you probably do. Many do. But again, fortunes and blue chips are most of the time concerned with keeping that footprint. So whereas a lot of energy at the solopreneur side is about basically getting ground and getting that customer base and moving things forward. So it's kind of an offensive play. Fortunes, I would say, generally, this is I know the CEOs of Fortunes are going to disagree with me. I'm going to get some emails, but it's more of a defensive play. If we're being honest, behind the scenes, it's protective work. It's hedging work. So it looks a little bit different.
Gotcha. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that everybody can follow you. Where can we find your new book that just came out? Tell people just a little bit more about that, but the floor is yours. Take as long as you need.
Yeah, Not Your Job. Discover the surprising way to save time, avoid burnout, and do what you love forever. Really, it is focused on solopreneurs or those small business owners who want to scale up. You can find that on Amazon. You can go to piercebrantley.co, or you can go follow me at facebook.com/Pierce Brantley. We talk about delegation, we talk about management, we talk about faith, and all sorts of fun stuff. So check out the book, and there's tons of free downloads with it too. There's like at least 14, I think. They're all going to be super helpful in helping you scale up.
That's fantastic. And I'll make sure that all of those are linked in the show notes so that people can go find them, check out the book, take away the downloads, everything. This has been a pleasure, Pierce. It's always super fun when I get just a little bit of time to pick your brain. I love keeping up with everything that you're doing. And I hope, nothing but the best for yourself as you keep going and book sales through the roof.
Dave, it was a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and comment. I love to interact. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel.